In today's video, I'm talking to lovely Fiona, who has very kindly agreed to share her tutoring journey as she went from SENDCO to teacher to independent tutor. If you like today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a supportive comment down below. And thank you very much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Right, so to start off with then, can you tell me what was your own experience of education like when you were growing up?
I went to school in quite a small primary school, I guess. You'd kind of class it as quite a small, kind of a village primary school. And I guess my memories of my own education kind of start there. There was one teacher in particular who kind of really sticks in my mind. Her name was Mrs. Moore. And I just remember that she kind of made like learning really not scary at all. So she was really kind of caring and nurturing. And kind of one thing that really sticks in my mind is when when you're adding and you're exchanging the tens and you put the little one underneath. If ever you forgot to add your one in, she used to kind of like pretend cry and say, "Oh, you've left it out on the doorstep," and like things like that. And it just made it kind of like a nice experience. It wasn't daunting, and it was just really nice and kind of calm and laid back and slightly fun as well.
Oh, that's lovely that you have that positive experience. Another tutor I spoke to said about a tutor that really inspired them and that you can remember their name as well. Like it's so
Yeah,
important. Have you ever seen
yeah.
that teacher again or heard about them or anything like that?
No, never.
Oh, how
No.
strange. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's lovely. Lovely. So then, as you grew up, what then made you want to work in education? Was it that teacher in particular or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably was that teacher, and I did have lovely teachers kind of throughout my like education. So I think it probably was the teachers that I kind of worked with. Um, I think also I've kind of always had a love of learning myself.
Yeah.
Um, I just love learning new things. So then to be able to help other people to learn, I think was kind of something that really appealed to me. So I kind of started down the education kind of track, I guess, and then got a bit hooked.
Oh, lovely. And then, so how did you become a teacher then? What was your route into teaching and what were the positives and what were there any negatives, challenges, that kind of thing?
So I did a 4-year BEd course,
Uh-huh.
um, which was amazing. There was loads of positives to that. We were able to do lots of learning about lots of different subjects. So I remember having lectures in how you teach history and how you teach PE and how
Oh,
you
that's
teach.
good.
I even remember we did lessons in how to teach swimming at one point. Um,
Well,
so yeah, it was really kind of really varied course. Um, I think negative wise, hard to find a negative really, but I'd say
good.
maybe kind of like the actual teaching practices could have been a bit longer, maybe,
Yeah.
because you kind of felt like you went into a school for a couple of weeks and then had to move to a different school. So I guess maybe those could have been longer. But I did really enjoy the course. I think it was fab. And the fact that it was 4 years meant that I kind of felt I went into my first job feeling really knowledgeable.
And did you get your qualification from that 4 years?
Mhm.
Ah,
Yeah.
because I didn't do that one. I did like an art degree and then I did like a teaching top up. But
Yeah.
that's interesting that you just got it all done rather than having to do like an extra year to get it done. So that was
Yeah.
really beneficial, I presume. So then obviously then you went into teaching. Now with that, you're saying you didn't have maybe enough time in schools. How did that then impact when you had a real job, so to speak, when you went into teaching?
Yeah, I mean, my first year, I did absolutely love my first year. I just feel that I learned a lot that first year.
Oh, you kind of
So I
chucked in the
think,
deep end.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I guess it was just that kind of feeling of, oh gosh, this is real. Um, but yeah, I think it was really good fun. And that's where I did most of my learning, I would say.
Oh, that's good. I think you do not necessarily, well, I suppose it's your mistakes in a way. You do learn from things going kind of wrong. And yeah, it's interesting the first year because you kind of expected to know everything, which I find strange. Because if you've never had a class of 30 children for a whole year before, there's so many things you never, ever, ever think of at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's so many things that you don't do on your teaching practice that then
Yeah.
you're expected to do, like all those kind of little bits that come as a bit of a surprise, I guess.
What do you remember that came as a really big surprise? Because for me, it was the assessment, because I was taught about teaching a lesson and I was taught about planning a lesson, but the actual like termly assessments and where children were meant to be and how you assess them, that was my shock to my system. What was yours?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And I think also because you do your teaching practices like halfway through the year, it's so different from kind of assessing children right at the beginning and right at the end of the year to have that
Yeah.
whole kind of year. Um, and I guess the other thing I found really interesting was kind of the mix of children that you have in your class,
Yeah.
um, and kind of having to create that inclusive class and deal with everything that comes with teaching that isn't just about the learning, like all kind of the pastoral side. I guess that was a bit of a shock as well.
Mm. I think there's a lot of things, like you say, because every child comes with their own story, don't they, to school? And like well, I certainly was, you were like, you wanted to make the perfect lesson, but if you
Mm.
walked into class and half the class were just not feeling it, you would
Yeah,
quickly have to learn to adapt very, very
yeah,
quickly.
absolutely.
So over time, you obviously carried on teaching. How did you then, like, what year groups did you do as the years went on?
Mhm. So I started in year 5 and year 6. I kind of did a lot of swapping between the two,
Okay.
um, which was fab. And I did that for a really, really long time. And then I went down to Key Stage 1,
Oh.
which was a bit of a shock because I went from year 6 to year 2. So
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, it was a shock. But and I'll be honest, it did take me a little while to kind of get into the Key Stage 1 mindset. But once I was there, I really, really enjoyed it. And
Oh, that's
I
good.
feel that they taught me a lot. I learned a
A
lot
lot of
when I was down there.
patience.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a lot of fun. So yeah, I did really enjoy it. But yeah, they're quite different year groups.
Yeah.
Although I think sometimes when I moved down, I kind of went through a phase the first kind of year that I had almost kind of parked everything I'd learned in upper key stage 2. And then I suddenly realized that actually, no, I could use those things. I just needed to
Okay.
adapt them. And so I think that was a really important step for me because all those things I didn't want to forget, I actually wanted to use them and they did work. You just need to adapt them a few bit, like a little bit.
Can you give me an example of something that you had to adapt that you can remember?
Um, yeah, so I guess some of the behavior management,
Okay.
you could kind of swap between the two. Like things like rewards and things that would work in year 6 do work in year 2, giving children rewards and things
Yeah.
like that, things to earn and things to work towards. Um, and I guess also some of the actual kind of learning activities. So
Yeah.
like some things in maths, perhaps. Um, so doing things like in year 6, you might give them a highlighter to highlight kind of different areas of a word problem. Whereas in year 2, you would give them a highlighter to maybe highlight different numbers, kind of like, I don't know, number 1s to 10, they could highlight things like that.
That's really good. I did the opposite to you. I was nursery, and then we didn't have an afternoon nursery, so I had to do all PPA cover. And so I was sent to year 6,
Oh gosh.
and it was scary. Yeah, I've had many a days where I was like, deep breath, deep breath. I like the children, but the content was just like year 6 maths. Surely it's year 7 or year 8 by now. It's so hard. It's so
Yeah.
I admire year 6 teachers so much. But people used to say in a jokey way, oh, if my head puts me down in nursery reception, I know they want me gone. Like they put me right down. I know they're testing me and they want me gone. It was just like a running joke, like vice versa. So it's
Yeah.
good that you've had experience in both, because 4 years in my experience when I went to teaching, many teachers stayed at the top and many teachers stayed at the bottom and they
Mhm.
never changed. Was that your experience initially, or was it quite mixed? with other
Um,
teachers?
no, I'd say that was my experience as well, that people tend to
Yeah.
stay in kind of one area. And I ended up moving schools to be able to move down to kind of
Oh,
Key
that's
Stage 1.
interesting. Oh,
Yeah, because I did really want to kind of vary my experience. But yes, I ended up moving schools.
oh, that's interesting that you had to make that step to be
Mm,
able to do that. So obviously schools were, I think it's more encouraged now that schools move
yeah.
quite frequently, and I don't know whether it's gone totally the opposite way, and I'm not sure about that. So okay, so you're obviously teaching a while. How did it come about that you started to look at becoming a Senko? Was it suggested to you? Had you been thinking about it? Was it your personal interest that led you there? Could you just let me know about that, please?
Yeah. So I'll be really honest, it wasn't anything that had kind of crossed my mind before. I was actually approached by my head teacher at the time.
Oh, wow.
And she'd kind of said that and she wondered if that was something I would want to look into in more detail. And then our current Senko left, and so there was a job opportunity, and she asked me again if I wanted to apply. So I said yes. Yeah, and then I did a lot of kind of the national SEN qualifications.
Oh, yeah.
So I did my national Senko award, the advanced, and the Senkos as leaders award as well. Um, and just through those courses and through teaching and meeting lots of different families and working with like the specialist teachers and occupational therapists, I kind of just really got hooked. And it became something that I was really, really passionate about. And although I'm not currently a Senko, I'm still really passionate about supporting those children that kind of need us most.
And with those qualifications that you did for becoming a Senko, what were the positives? Were there certain things that surprised you about it, possibly?
Um, yeah, I think the most positive that I got out of it was the science behind it.
Oh, okay, that's
So yeah,
interesting.
so I found that really interesting, and I remember learning things about ADHD and the lady that was doing the presentation. I remember she showed us like kind of pictures of different brain scans. And talked about how the brain actually works differently in certain people. And I just found that absolutely fascinating, that this kind of like real scientific evidence was there.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. I've never even ever looked into Senko. I've got friends or know of people that are Senkos,
Mhm.
and that's really interesting, the like scientific side, so that you've got that knowledge when you're
Mm.
talking to parents, I guess, and to other
Yeah.
professionals. That's really interesting. So now, how long were you a Senko for?
So Senko for 6 years.
Oh wow, so you did it for quite a number of years.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
And how's it been now then coming from Senko back to a class teacher? Have you enjoyed that transition back, or like what's that been like?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I did absolutely love being Senko for the time I was. But I found that what I wanted to do was work with the children more. Um,
Oh, okay.
and being Senko, there is quite a bit of paperwork that kind of comes with
Yeah.
that. So that's why I wanted to get back into class teaching, because the teaching is the bit that I really love, and kind of supporting those children in the classroom. So yeah, so that's why I kind of went back to classroom teaching.
Oh, lovely. And what year groups have you done since being a Senko?
So I have done, so after that was when I taught year two,
Oh,
and
okay.
I've done year three, and another stint in year five as well.
Oh, wow. Oh, do you have a preference for a year group, or not
Um,
fussed?
I do like the older children actually. I do like
Yeah.
year five and year six.
When I was in nursery for years, so then to go to older year groups, even year two, they were like mega independent in
Yeah,
comparison.
yeah, I can imagine.
Right. So now I noticed on your Facebook page about growth mindset,
Mhm,
and you're quite passionate about it. So how did you, because we did a lot of it, one of my heads was really passionate about it.
mhm,
How did you come across it, and what is it for people that don't know it, and how is it beneficial to children that you work with?
mhm. Yeah, so growth mindset is about kind of understanding that we can all learn, and our brains are all able to learn as long as we're in the right environment, and we believe that ourselves. and through hard work and learning through your mistakes, everybody can learn. And I first discovered growth mindset a really long time ago. I was sent on this kind of course. It was right back when growth mindset kind of wasn't really known very widely. And I was sent on this course that kind of nobody else really wanted to go on in my school. And it was all about growth mindset. And I just thought it was absolutely fascinating. I remember on the course we learned that classic story of the London black cab drivers. And there was like this study done where they compared their brains to brains of people who had been given a map to follow. And the cab drivers don't have a map. They have to know the streets of London.
Yeah, it's really difficult, I think.
Yeah, they have to like pass a test, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I think like
really hard.
Uber drivers have to do that as well as London drivers in general have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just really interesting because it just showed how their brain had kind of grown, and their kind of like it was just this evidence that just showed their brain had grown and they were better at learning because they'd had to try and they'd had to kind of put 100% effort into this. So yeah, that just was really interesting. And then I just took all of that back to my school and we kind of really pushed it out, and it really made a difference to a lot of the children.
Oh wow, that's really, we never had any stories like that, I don't think. Our head was liked it very much. And because I think it was pushed as an initiative at a certain point in a lot of schools. And then I'm not sure if it's been is it carried on in your school that you're in at the minute? Like, do you use it in your school as a program or anything?
We don't tend to use it as a program, but I think there's a lot of us that kind of use it because we really like it.
Right.
And I think also it comes hand in hand with the maths mastery that's quite big at the
yeah.
because obviously there you have to really learn from your mistakes and you have to push through the challenges,
Yeah.
kind of challenge your brain as well, and that comes with the maths mastery. So I think that's brought kind of growth mindset back to the kind of front of the queue, I guess, for things that will help children to learn.
Oh, that's interesting. So, obviously you've told me a lot about your teaching now. So when did you first hear about tutoring?
I know a couple of tutors. I've got a couple of friends who
Okay.
are
Oh,
tutors. And actually, I also, when I did my maths GCSE, I really don't like exams. The pressure of kind of being timed is just not not for me. So I did actually have a tutor myself when I was that age, just to help me with my confidence. And they really did. And I remember thinking, wow, this person's helping me learn at kind of my own pace and really helping my confidence to grow. So yeah, I guess probably that's how I first kind of thought actually tutoring is a really nice thing to do.
Oh, you remind me, I had a tutor for maths because I hated it at school.
Yeah.
I absolutely hated it. A lot of people have anxiety around maths.
Yeah.
And that's, I wonder if there's ever been research into that, like why it's always maths that they're always more stressed about.
Yeah, absolutely. Be interesting to know.
Yeah, definitely. So when did you then first take the leap into tutoring? When did you do your like first lesson? So how did it actually go from thinking about it to right, let's do it?
Yeah, so I got talking to a friend of mine who tutors, and she just really inspired me. She was just kind of telling me how it's really lovely because you can make your lessons really individual, and kind of help children learn at their own pace, and let them take the lead and kind of just really help them to understand something. And she just really inspired me, and I was like, actually, that's something that I really want to do. I really enjoy teaching children, and it would be really nice to do that on a more kind of individual level.
Did you find it strange going from 30 children to one child?
Yeah.
I find it strange. Like an hour, I'll be like, what am I going to do with this child for an hour? Normally I feel it with 30 children.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it can be a bit overwhelming. So when did you do that then? When was your first ever lesson?
So my first ever lesson was back in October, so the beginning of October.
Last year.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, then. So how do you think it's changed over time then?
So I think what's really lovely is that, like you said about the kind of the class of 30, and so I'd kind of started by thinking, right, we'll do this topic, then we'll do this topic, then we'll do this topic. But actually, what's so lovely is that I don't need to do that. I can teach that child whatever I feel they're struggling with and whatever they ask me to help them with.
Mm,
Um, and so I think that's kind of how I've changed so far, is that I'm realizing that I can do things on an individual basis and really plan my lessons to kind of support those children, um, rather than perhaps go with the curriculum. I can go with
mm.
what the child needs.
That's one thing I really struggle with in the beginning. I'll be like, oh, they'll be at this point of the year in school, so I've got to get all of this done, not
Yeah,
thinking I'm only with them an hour a week. Like, this is ridiculous. And you do, if you're new to it, I think sometimes you can get a bit like overwhelmed by that and think, I've got to get this in, da da da. You're like,
yeah,
hang on a minute, what does the child actually need? Not
yeah,
what you think they need.
yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
it's interesting. What has surprised you then about tutoring so far?
um I think, to be honest with you, the biggest kind of like surprise I think has more been the business side of things. um
Okay.
so the tutoring, I really enjoy the actual kind of working with the children. That's that I really like. um but kind of building up my own business, although I am enjoying it, I think that's been the biggest surprise, is all kind of the little bits like the paperwork and communication and that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Would that be a challenge then as well, your biggest challenge?
Yeah, I think I would say that's my biggest challenge, just because it's so different to anything I've ever done before.
Yeah.
So obviously the tutoring side is that's what, that was my career, that's what I am a teacher.
Mm.
But yeah, the business side is challenging.
Yeah, it can be because you've got to go into that business mindset, whereas at school you were only in, or in school you're only in the teaching role. You don't have to deal with finances or anything like
Yeah,
that. So
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, a big change for that. So you've said you started, you already knew some tutor friends. So
Mhm.
obviously, have you found it, well, I suppose it won't be lonely really then, because you're still at school and you've got your tutor friends. Have you met other tutor friends through the friends that you originally had?
Yeah, a couple. Um, but I'd say actually social media has been really lovely for meeting people, because I've chatted to quite a few people that I didn't know, just that I've met kind of through Facebook groups and things like that. So, um, although social media is sometimes portrayed in a negative way, I think for me, going through this experience, it has been a real positive.
Yeah, definitely. I tried the whole when I first started researching, a lot of people said, "Oh, word of mouth, da da da," and for me, it's been social media
Mm,
because that's how my business took off. And so, if it works in some communities, I think it's great. But if you're not utilizing social media, then I think you're missing a massive
mm,
audience like, in whatever you do, not just tutoring, so to speak.
yeah.
So, what is one piece of advice you would give to another tutor? So maybe someone that, like you, is still teaching and wants to do tutoring on the side. What would you say to them to help them out?
Um, I think kind of what we were saying before about talking to other people. So I think social media, getting to know other tutors, ask for advice, and I just think kind of letting people know that that's what you're doing and that's kind of what you want to do next, so that you've got lots of people to support you and talk to and share ideas. And also, I guess that word of mouth as well, so people know what you're doing, so
Mm,
they can share with other people.
that's interesting. And how many times a week do you tutor then if you're teaching as well in school?
So at the minute, I'm doing 4 days a week after school.
So what advice would you have for tutors managing that workload, like the teaching workload and the tutoring workload? Like, do you have set days where you do certain tasks, or do you just go with the flow type of person?
I do tend to have set days where I will do kind of my tutoring planning.
Right.
Um, and I would also say sometimes I would kind of try and look back at kind of past lessons that I've taught and use kind of my knowledge of classroom teaching as well to kind of support my tutoring kind of going forward. So try and kind of match up the two, I guess.
Oh, lovely. That's good. Because I've always wondered, because teaching is a very, very hard job on its own, and then to do tutoring as well. So, like, what would be your latest lesson at night?
So I finish at 7:30.
Oh, wow. So that is a long day. But then I suppose if you're enjoying the lessons, they won't feel like
Yeah,
hard
absolutely.
work.
Yeah, exactly. And I do try and plan things that are kind of nice and fun and kind of like laid back, as well as kind of helping the children to learn. So yeah,
A
it's
bit
enjoyable.
different from your teaching in school, then, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. Right, to finish off then, what do you currently offer and where can people find you?
So I offer one-to-one online tutoring. I currently do years 2 to 7 for English and maths. And you can find me on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram as Rowan Tutor.
Lovely. And I'll leave your details below in case anybody wants to get in contact with you. Well, thank you very much for
Thank
chatting
you.
to me. It was lovely to
Thank
speak
you.
to you.
Yeah, it was lovely to speak to you too. Thank you.
Ah, if you liked today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see who else I'm chatting to about their experience in education.